Hello, Sean here, Mountains Garage. In the state of Maine, where the weather the last 2 days has been impeccable. About 80-ish degrees in the heat of the day, low humidity. At night it's about 59 to 60 degrees. Got the window open, nice for sleeping. So I'm well rested. And today I've been doing a few things. Now it's getting along in the afternoon, and I really need to get another case prepped so I can build another transmission. I got 2 more to go in this latest batch, and then maybe I can go back to working on my own stuff for a few days. So this is the case from one of the $75 TH475s that I dragged home, well, good month and a half, 2 months ago now. It was a great deal. Doesn't happen very often. Internally, the thing was in nice shape, but externally, I've cleaned this already for a few hours, but it was pretty much this natural corroded aluminum state. And the steel bolts in the aluminum case, we didn't fare very well, and I have quite a few I need to weld out. I'm going to weld nuts on them. I buy 1/2-inch unplated nuts. This last batch I bought at the local, bargain basement store. It's only local to Maine. It's called Martin's. But they have bolts and nuts by the pound. So I buy myself a couple pounds of unplated 1/2-inch. I find that covers just about anything I want to weld. And in this case, I'll show you. I'll take the camera around. But the bolts are shiny on the end where they broke, because I broke them. And they're just stuck in the aluminum. They weren't cross-threaded in originally. It's just a product of corrosion. So my hopes is I can get the rear one out for the tail housing without breaking the case. Having to weld that up. So we'll get to that. But the first thing, I've been asked a couple times about if I didn't have a rotary parts washer, how would I clean the case? Well, my answer is pretty much the same way I clean the case now. I sit it right here on the bench, or sometimes in the holster, and I scrape it with a pocket screwdriver and a putty knife. Because, I've mentioned this before, I don't want to fill my parts washer full of dirt, because then I had to clean it out of the parts washer. Eventually, there'll be so much dirt built up in the bottom, the heating element won't heat the water, and it's a mess. And you got to clean out all that oily goo. I'd much rather scrape it into a trash can, or scrape it on the bench and push it in the trash can here while it's still somewhat dry, than to have to dig it out of the machine. So that is my method. So by the time I put it in the parts washer, the rotary parts washer that gets hot and spins around, it's not having to, I still run it for a few hours, but it doesn't have to eat it all away, and it won't. This thing is, like, it's run for 3 hours and it's still pretty dirty. I have to physically scrape some more. But I typically get it this clean and then do a few mods, get out broken bolts, prep all the threads, cut the ears off if I'm cutting the ears off, drill and tap the vent, do all the prep work, stone the valve body area, and then I'll wash it one more time. Sometimes I'll just take it outside and simple green it and hose it off, or pressure wash it off. But it's only recent in the last few years that I had the rotary parts washer. And of course I bought it broken and had to fix it because I can't afford to buy a new one, or I was too cheap to buy a new one. Somewhere in there. Yeah, pick one. Anyway, so let's start with the mods I do. I drill and tap the vent. 1/8-inch pipe. Hope you can still see me. If you have a plastic vent transmission, these wiggle right out. They got a small flare on them, but I just take them and push them right out through, behind the pump, with the pump removed, obviously. The flare is to keep it from coming out this way. If you have a metal vent transmission, you have to go in with a punch from the pump side of the case and just pop it out. The metal vent transmissions, while they have a lot of other features that I like, actually tapping the hole that's left behind when you drive out the metal vent is a little more of a trick because the hole is larger than I drill 21/64 for 1/8 inch pipe. This hole is slightly larger and it's already straight and big. Now let me explain. Let's just say, well, this was a plastic vent transmission. I already did it and forgot to film it, but I'm just going to go through the steps. So I wiggled out the vent. It's still usable. I save it for any reason I might need it. I have my 21/64 in my cordless drill. It won't go straight, but I rest the drill up against the case and drill in this way. There's pretty much, it's resting right on the case. And that makes a crooked hole. Why would I want a crooked hole? Well, what it does is it aligns the existing hole into the square opening in the gasket. I'll show you that afterwards as well. So my preferred method, for the first reason, it lines it up inside the hole in the gasket. So I'm not making any area under the gasket. I'm not removing material from there. With the metal vent transmission, obviously I don't have to drill it, but I tap them both the same way. My tap setup, which is right out of my Blue Point tap and die set, is just barely clearing the case on an angle. I've already tapped it, so it's going to go in. I run the tap in till the front of the tap is even but hasn't broken through the pump surface. I find that to be perfect because, as you know, pipe thread is tapered, so the further in you go, you're making a tapered hole. You want it large enough on this end so the fitting will start, but you don't want it sloppy. So I've drilled it on an angle, I've tapped it on an angle, and it works out perfect. And now you actually have room, if you've replaced the plastic vent, to easily tighten the fitting up. When I put it a 1/4 inch truck airline fitting, 90 degree, it swivels. So all you do is put a little pipe dope on it, start it, and I have room with the wrench to tighten it. The ones with the metal vent, if you don't tap it on a slight angle, I tap it on the same angle, and it comes out just fine. Even though the hole is straight, it makes it crooked. If you went straight in, and I've done a lot of them that have been already done, and it's almost impossible to get a fitting in there. You're grinding down a wrench and you can't get a socket on it. It's just a pain in the butt. In the Reed case, they thought ahead and did it one better. They turned the hole 90 degrees so it's facing out toward the side, and there's no issue starting and tightening up the fitting. That's an improvement over the OEM case. Yet another improvement. Here's the case up in the holster so I can weld out some of my broken bolts, but here's a pump gasket. And you can see if I didn't go on an angle with the drill, that the hole for the vent would be out under the gasket. Here's a metal vent transmission case where the same thing. If I hadn't tapped on an angle, I'm going to worsen the situation. It's already under the gasket. So I angle it in and I actually improved it this direction. But again, the metal case transmissions, metal vent case transmissions work out just fine. It's just a pipe fitting for a vent, fortunately. But you don't want to go straight in. And now for my broken bolts. I have 1, 2 in the pan. I have 1 stud sticking out here, so that should be easy enough to weld the nut on. And that heat should allow me to take it out with a wrench. Time will tell. But my first sign, all I wanted to do is drain this transmission when I still had the brake drum on it. When you're breaking governor cover bolts, you know it's corroded. But I get 2 of those out and then chase all the threads, and hopefully this case will be usable. So I may as well start right here. And this is the worst position because this is the thinnest portion of the case, and often this will split. I've split them on this side as well. We've seen them split, but this side is the most susceptible. So I'm going to weld the nut on and hope for the best. After I check the area. I have a drain bucket, some rags. That's a fire waiting to happen. So let me police my area, and then I'll get busy welding. So in a classic case of how bad do you want it, 2 full hours later, 23 attempts, each one taking off a piece of the stud. Unbelievable. I got them all out with the exception of the last bottom governor cover hole. I was able to prick punch it because I welded, well, 6 or 7. I kept removing a piece of a stud every time with a broken bolt. I was able to prick punch it on center and drill it to tap size, and when I ran the tap through it, knocked out the rest of the bolt. And now I've tapped it 5/16 18, but I don't trust it, so I'll helicoil that one. It was starting to eat the aluminum. That's why I gave up on it as I was welding deeper and deeper into the hole. My word. It's a beautiful case. I couldn't see throwing it away for the sake of, you know, $1 worth of nuts, but and some welding wire and gas and time. Kind of makes the old SFI case that comes right out of the box. It looks prettier every time, price-wise. Well, not really, because we're in different zip codes for sure. That versus that. And no, I didn't do all this work with this lower unit sitting there. I just had another box of parts show up from my buddy Kevin. Some more pistons. A greasy tail housing he apologized for, but hey, he threw it in. I'm not going to complain. Rear servo, all the small parts in the bag that I'm always missing. Super handy. Another nice 8-bolt pump. Really convenient when I have more cases than I do hard parts. So I thank him for that. Well, I'm back out after supper. Had to run a few errands, but I wanted to come out and at least get a portion of my bench back. I prefer it when it's empty, but I've got too many transmission parts parked over here. I have pretty much got most of this one done, and I got 2 more complete ones I need to do in this batch, and then I think I'm caught up technically for a while. I want to build a few for myself just to have, get rid of some cases, but thanks to good deals like I've been getting on some internal parts, and I got the gift of a case. I'm going to show you, I'm going to tack the video clips right after I stop talking, and you can watch that, and I won't be back to say goodbye, but I will leave you with some awesome footage from Mother Nature. So I'll catch you in a couple days. Hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you soon. It's always exciting to me when UPS, FedEx, or the post office shows up on my door. Today, I got a big box. I had a gentleman approach me, want to know if he could send me some parts. It didn't take a lot of convincing for me to say yes. I believe this has a Turbo 400 case with the bell housing cut off, and maybe some other goodies. So let me dig her out. Nice packing job, by the way. Inside the box, nicely wrapped up in about 7 miles of bubble wrap, is a perfectly good used tail housing, nice and clean. 2 aluminum pistons, one with a check ball, one without. And one of the nicest cases I've ever seen as far as corrosion goes. Clearly not from around here. Around here, I mean, I've washed this case here for about 3 hours yesterday. And you know, we're getting down there, but the spots that are preserved by grease, or mud in this case, are in pretty good shape. The dry aluminum tends to react to road salt and conditions up here in the Northeast. With this case, was probably never subjected to such harshness. Now it's a 69cc case. Other first impressions, the gentleman was nice enough to leave the governor cover, modulator clamp, all the park linkage, fully intact. Decoding the tag, it's a 1969 CC. And CC seems to be only Mexican vehicles. That's interesting. So as I'm checking it out, It is, again, one of the nicest cases. It looks virtually brand new. I've never seen these bosses cast into a side of a Turbo 400. So I'm glad I got up out of bed this morning so I could learn something else. Look at the thickness around the linkage seal. Usually I'm being super careful not to break the case in a regular Turbo 400, average case. In this case, it's super thick, and it has these bosses, probably for a neutral start or some kind of indicator like that. Maybe only Mexican vehicles. Clearly it was never drilled and tapped, but again, interesting. By comparison, here's a stock Turbo 400 case, the thickness around the area where the linkage seal is. The reed case is plenty beefy around here. But this one still takes the cake, and these bosses are just intriguing. Like I say, it must have had some kind of neutral start, backup light, safety switch, or something that I've just never seen before. If I have, I don't remember it. Seems like I would have, because these are pretty beefy. One goes all the way into the case. Interesting, and I love interesting things.